Hey everybody, figured out how to make this like webcam be in the corner of the video while I do the video, so you get to see me. It's kind of cool. Um, for chapter three for this video, afterwards, I'm gonna want you guys to post something for me on Teams on our Microsoft Teams webpage. What you'll have to post, so think about while I'm reading, is a question you have, so something you're like, well, what does that mean, or what is that? A prediction you have, so something, what do you think will happen later in the story? And a connection you have. And we've talked about connections before, but just a quick review. A connection could be something big. Like for me, I've went to Nepal and climbed a mountain, so that's like a connection I have with the story. It's a big, clear connection. But a connection could be really simple, right? It could be like Peak was really scared when he was up high, and I would be really scared if I was up high on a skyscraper too, right? Something that simple, right? Peak has two sisters, something like that could be a connection you have as well. Okay? So it can be very simple, right? Peak is funny, and I am funny. So really easy. Don't overthink it. Do your best. And after this, I'll send you over to the teams. So, chapter 3, A Couple of Stitches and the Slammer. When I stepped out of the elevator into the lobby, I was shocked by the swarm of reporters with flashing cameras. How did they get there so quickly? He's just a kid. What's your name? He's bleeding. Why'd you do it? Did you make it to the top? I didn't answer any of their questions. In fact, I barely looked at them. The whole point of a spectacular tag is not the artwork. It's the mystery of how it's done. A tag is another word for graffiti. A subway rider goes by the same 17 abandoned freight cars parked on a sidetrack week after week, year after year. Then one morning, all 17 of them have been tagged top to bottom with wild, beautiful graffiti. Or a driver in bumper to bumper traffic drives under the same overpass 1,000 times, barely noticing it, until the morning the entire span is painted day-glow orange and green. How'd they do it? Scaffolds? In one night? How many of them were there? Where were the cops? What's the point? The mystery. That's the point. And there isn't enough of it, in my opinion. My little blue mountains were small, but I made up for their size by putting them in audacious places where they might never be seen except by a bored office worker or a window washer. This was my sixth skyscraper. I had planned to do 9 altogether. Why? I have no idea. Now everyone would know how I did it. The mystery was gone, and that was the worst part of getting caught. Or so I thought. I expected my mom to show up in the emergency room and tear off my left ear, but she didn't. And it turned out that my right ear was still attached to my head, and as was most of my cheek. The East Indian emergency doc took a look at my face under the light for a minute or two, and then asked me what happened, eyeing the two cops standing in the doorway as if they were the ones who had messed me up. My face froze to a wall. You should have used. Oh, it doesn't even ask you. My face froze to a wall. You should have used lukewarm water to unfreeze it. If I'd had some handy, I would have. I'm going to clean it up and put in a couple of little stitches. I was out of there in less than an hour. The two cops drove me to the police station and put me in a filthy room with a two-way mirror. I didn't look so hot. I didn't feel so good either. My head throbbed, my arms and legs ached, and I had 4 fingernails split all the way down the middle. It felt like someone had lit them on fire. The emergency doc hadn't even bothered to look at them. After what seemed like 2 days, the door opened and a tired-looking detective in a rumpled suit came in carrying my backpack and a thick file. He dumped the contents of the pack on the table and went through everything piece by piece. When he finished, he scooped the stuff back in, then looked at me and shook his head. You messed up, Pete. Peak, I said. Like a mountain peak? That's right. Weird name. Weird parents. Yeah, I just talked to your mother. She said that I had her permission to beat you to death. Good old mom. I just got another phone call, he added. The mayor. I've been a cop for 35 years, and I've never gotten a personal call from the mayor. He's upset. Turns out he was at a reception in the Woolworth building. They thought you were a terrorist, and it's pretty clear now that you're just a moron. He stared at me, waiting for a reaction. I didn't give him one. I was a moron. I should have checked the building's evening schedule more carefully before I scaled it. The reporters hadn't rushed over to snap photos of me. They were already there for the mayor's reception, and so were the cops. They'll take you over to JDC in a bit. What's JDC? I hadn't been arrested before. Juvenile Detention Center. You'll stay there until you're arraigned. I wasn't sure what that meant either. And the detective must have sensed this because he explained that there was a separate court system for juvenile defendants. The district attorney would decide what the charges would be, and I would have to go before a judge and plead guilty or not guilty. Then they'll let me out, I said. Maybe, maybe not. Depends on how much the bail is and whether your parents can cough up the dough. Or they might deny bail altogether, which means you're in JDC until your trial or sentencing date. That could be months. The courts are backed up. My mouth went dry. I haven't been in trouble before, I said. You mean you haven't been caught before? The detective opened the file folder and spread out 3 photographs on the table. We've been tracking these tags for quite a while now. Looks like we caught the tagger red-handed. The photos were grainy, obviously taken with a long telephoto lens, but the blue stenciled mountains were clear enough. 2 uniformed cops were waiting for me outside the interrogation room along with my mom, who was so mad she could barely speak. She looked at the bandages on my face and managed to ask if I was okay. Yeah, I'm fine. We've got to take him to JDC, ma'am, one of the cops said. Mom nodded, then looked at me. We'll see what we can do, Peak. You've really done it this time. The cops led me away. By the 3rd day at JDC, I was climbing the wall, literally, until my counselor, that's what they call the guards here, told me to stop. Spider Boy, Fly Boy, the Gecko Kid was front page news every morning. Each article dug deeper and deeper into my family's past. My mom, dad, stepfather, even my twin sisters were targets. There were infrared photos of me clinging to the skyscraper, photos from school, photos of my mom and dad when they were rock rats, and my other 2 Blue Mountain tags had been discovered. I stopped reading the newspaper accounts after the 2nd day and left the common room when the news came on the television. They limited our phone calls at JDC. I was only able to catch Mom once to ask her what was going on, but she was meeting with the attorneys and didn't have time to talk. On the morning of the 4th day, my counselor came into my room, that's what they call the cells, and said I have a visitor. Finally. I was pretty disappointed to see it was Vincent in the visiting room instead of my mom. No offense, Vincent. He looked a little shocked when he saw my scabbed over face and ear. If you remember from the first chapter, Vincent is Peak's English teacher. I brought some books for you to read, he said, pushing a couple of paperbacks across the table. I imagine it gets a bit boring in here. Yeah, thanks. I also brought along a couple moleskin notebooks. He took 2 black, shrink-wrapped notebooks out of his bag and set them on the table. like they were sacred texts. They are made in Italy. Van Gogh, Picasso, Ernest Hemingway, Bruce Chatwin drew or wrote in moleskins. Really? I guess I'd better tell you a little more about my school. It's a special school. In fact, so special that it doesn't have an official name. It's simply known as the Green Street School, or GSS, because that's the street it's on. There are 100 students, kindergarten through high school, from all over Manhattan. Most of the kids are prodigies, meaning they play music, they sing, dance, act, solve math problems computers can't solve, and me, who can't do any of these things. I got in because of my stepfather, Rolf, Rolf Young. He's on their advisory board and does all their legal work pro bono, meaning for free. The school is 2 blocks from our loft, and my twin sisters go there, too. But unlike me, they deserve to be there. They're both piano wizards. It took them a year to figure out my talent, which I think they made up, so Rolf could continue to do stuff for free. Peak is our writer, the headmistress declared one day, holding up an essay I'd scrawled out that morning as I gulped down a bowl of cereal before leaving for school. I would have preferred to be their climber, but GSS doesn't recognize sports as a worthy human endeavor. Don't get me wrong, I like GSS. The students and teachers are a quirky bunch and wildly entertaining. I've even managed to learn some things there. The problem is that I don't have any friends at the school. This isn't anyone's fault, really. My main interest is climbing. The other students are interested in things like number theory, what kinds of gut what kind of gut to use in their violin or cello bows, and painting techniques. Anyway, this is how I got hooked up with Vincent. As the school's English teacher, he got stuck with the job of mentoring the alleged writer. He unwrapped one of the moleskins and showed me how there was a little pocket in back to store notes and how the elastic band stretched to mark your place or hold the notebook closed. If you remember, guys, at the very start, one of the first pages in the book, it said Moleskin #1. So maybe right now we're reading Moleskin #1. I brought you a pen, he said, but they would not let me give it to you. They were afraid you would write on your wall with it. I think they were probably more afraid I would use it to stab somebody. Or, more likely, someone would take it away and stab me with it. I will see what I can do about getting you something to write with, Vincent said. He always spoke slowly, enunciating each word precisely, and I had never heard him use a contraction. Some of the best literature ever written was composed inside prison cells. I didn't plan on being at JDC long enough to compose anything. Whether you come back to school or not, you can still complete this year. I have talked to the headmistress. 4 other authors and I will evaluate you by the words you put in the notebook. Evaluate meant graduate at GSS. I brought you 2 moleskins in case you write a longer piece. It must be a story, not a diary or a journal, with a beginning, middle, and a denouement at the end to tie the story together. The story can be based on your life, someone else's life, or events completely from your imagination. You only have to complete one of the moleskins to fulfill your requirement, using some of the writing techniques I have taught you during the past year. I'm coming back to school, I said. He didn't look like he believed me. Regardless, he said, the assignment will remain the same. Later that morning, I had a second visitor.